Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing? I love the initial applause because people are like, we're in a library. I don't know if we can be loud, but it is okay. We can be loud. Good afternoon, everybody. Can I just get no, I'm just playing. I'm not hosting. I'm hosting GBH. I just want to say hello, everyone, and welcome to Outspoken Saturday. We are here at the Boston Public Library in the Newsfeed Cafe. Can we get a round of applause for the Newsfeed Cafe, serving us this amazing food and coffee. My name is Amanda Shea, and I will be your host for this afternoon. For those who are not familiar with spoken word poetry, it is a form of performance art in which speakers express themselves verbally on a particular topic. Throughout the year, we have been centering our poetry around what matters to you. And, you know, what does matter to us? Right now, it's fall, and it's New England. I'll pause for the silence and the applause later because, as we know, summer did not leave us very well. Fall just kind of ushered us right on in. And today, I'm very honored and very humbled to be having a panel discussion before we start our Outspoken Saturday poetry programming. Can we get a yes? Yes. With that being said, some of y'all are still shy, but that's okay. We're going to get you loud really soon. As you can see, there are folks right above you. Say hi, everyone, up there on the stairs. We see you, too, so join us for the conversation. But I want to get started right into our panel. Please allow me to introduce our fabulous guest, Josie Hanna Colon, José C. Massó III.
Greetings.
And last but certainly not least, Naheem Garcia. I am going to be giving some background because you're like, who are these people and why are they here? If you did not know, we are in the month of National Hispanic Heritage Month. So we are celebrating all identities, Afro-Latino communities all across Boston, Massachusetts, and all over the world. With that being said, I want to start with Josiana. We call her Josie for short. Josie is a first-generation Dominican-American dedicated to education equality, equity, and reforming policy to ensure opportunity gaps are closed. Currently, in her third year at Northeastern University,
All right, Josie.
she is pursuing a degree in criminal justice and human services with a minor in law and public policy. Beyond her academic pursuits, Josie is a passionate poet who weaves her multifaceted identity into her work, drawing from her experience as an Afro-Latina, daughter, friend, lover, and she expresses her journey through evocative verses. Please, again, give a round of applause for Josie. We're in for a special treat because Josie will be performing her poetry right after this panel discussion. Please welcome Naheem Garcia, Alexis Renee Garcia, professionally known as Naheem Garcia, was born in Cuba and moved to Boston, Massachusetts in 1968. Since then, he has been extremely involved in the world of theater as both a theater educator and an actor. As an educator, he has dedicated close to 30 years. Can we give it up for 30 years of his career as a resident teaching artist and member of the Huntington Theater Company's education department. He has received numerous awards. In his acting career, Naheem has appeared in several prominent Hollywood and independently produced feature films. Also, a selected list includes Holdovers, I Just Want to Dance with Somebody, and also Hocus Pocus 2. Please give it up one more again for Naheem Garcia. And before we get to our last panelist, I just want to say it is very daunting. Even though some of us have been in this career field for a very long time, it's daunting to be up here and be vulnerable in front of an audience of folks that we do not know. So when I ask for high energy, it's okay to give it. So last but certainly not least, we have José C. Massó III. Born in Old San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is where my family is from, José Massó eventually moved to Ohio and then to Boston, Massachusetts. In Boston, he began his professional career in 1973 as an educator and public servant teaching bilingual education at Copley Square High School during court-mandated busing desegregation in the Boston public school system. Today, José C. Massó III is the host of Con Salsa. For nearly 5 decades, his weekly bilingual program has served as a bridge builder between languages, races, cultures, ethnicities, and nationalities. Throughout his career, he has worked with several respected political figures to empower Latinos, especially Afro-Latinos, with a sense of pride, unity, and collective strength. Please put your hands together one more time for José C. Massó III.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to start with how are y'all doing? How are you feeling today?
Blessed.
Yes.
Feeling really good.
Blessed, feeling really good, and yes. Okay,
yes.
I love that for us. How was the commute in?
Terrible.
That was really for you. With that being said, I want to get right into the questions and really want to just start with you all's background. How has your heritage, your background, influenced your personal and professional journeys in the U.S.? And José, I'm going to start with you.
Well, first and foremost, let me also add my welcome to all of you here to this beautiful location, Historic Center of Libraries in the United States of America. I happen to be on the Board of Trustees of the Boston Public Library, so you're in one of our homes, and I want to say in Spanish, nuestra casa es su casa, así que bienvenidos a su casa. Our house is your house, so welcome to your house, which is the Boston Public Library. Give yourselves a big round of applause for being members of this august group of libraries and all the librarians who do the great job that they do. That being said, so it's important for us to always keep in context narratives and stories, I believe. And I always go with this adage, this African proverb says, until the lion told the story of the hunt, the hunter will always be glorified. I'm going to repeat it one more time. Until the lion told the story of the hunter will always be glorified. And so for me, being a Puerto Rican, born in the archipelago of Puerto Rico, that means my nationality is Puerto Rican. Being a Puerto Rican is meaning that all of us who were born in Puerto Rico or anywhere else who have Puerto Rican nationality are U.S. citizens since 1917 because Puerto Rico became a colony of this country in 1898. Being born in that beautiful archipelago of Puerto Rico in the Caribbean means also that my ethnicity is Afro-Boricua because my descendancy is one of being an Afro-descendant, so my race is black. So when you combine all those things together, from the very beginning, I come from a family of proud Afro-descendants. My grandfather's in the history books. He's in the Sports Hall of Fame for being the rider and the trainer of a very famous horse called Dulce Sueño. During the month of September, they celebrate El Festival de Dulce Sueño in Guayama, Puerto Rico, which is honoring this great horse, which is known as El Padrote, the father of these great horses known of Paso Fino type of horse. My grandmother lived to be 112 years, 6 months in a day, his wife. Wow. So therefore, you can see the history that she lived through, and she's in the history books as well. My father and his brothers served in the Army. My father started as a buck private. When he retired, he was a major in the United States Army. You have to imagine during that period of time, Second World War, Korean War, Jim Crow, for him to go from private to major in the United States Army, leading at the end a company of 150 men, in which the person in the middle with his officer badges was my father, a U.S. Army captain retiring as a major. So I come from a rich history of people who have been barrier breakers and history makers. Which then, therefore, that was what I was brought up in. And my models were Afro-Boricuas. My models were history makers. My models were barrier breakers, both men and women within my family. And so, therefore, my heritage has played a very important role in my being, having a sense of identity, having a sense of purpose, having a sense of power, having a sense of being able to be a change agent in society, having a sense of being able to do all that I wanted to do throughout my 50 years of professional service. And so therefore, a long-winded answer to your question, how identity plays a role. Identity is who I am. Identity is what I do. Identity is why I do what I do. Identity is where I am, where I am. And so therefore, I think identity is the crux for all of us, regardless of our ancestors. We start with our identity. And in this particular moment, we're celebrating, of course, the rich tradition of Latinos, but in particular, it's important to celebrate the Afro-descendants and the rich tradition that we have as Afro-Latinos, be us from the Caribbean, be us from Central South America, or be us from this country, the United States of America.
Can we just have a round of applause for that?
I know you're not asking me to go after that.
I am.
Yeah. Well, like Don Jose, I came to this country with my grandmother, my mother, my aunt from Cuba. My mother was a dancer. My grandmother sang at the Copacabana in Cuba. And my aunt was a little girl. But when we came here, the inspiration of being a proud Afro-Guano and being connected, my father and his brothers in Cuba were famous singers. So it's in my blood. And not only that, it became a platform where I had a voice, where I could be heard, and I could express what I need to express in an artistic manner where people can embrace it from all over the world. So the beautiful part about being an Afro-Guano and my grandmother, a retired Boston public school teacher. My aunt just retired as a principal. So the education, it was put into me, shoved into me, as well as the pride to be an Afro-Guano and to make sure that my voice be heard.
Wow. I hear you.
Yeah. To be honest, I think for me, like, I'm first generation Dominican American, but in la casa mía, everyone spoke Spanish.
That's right.
So everyone spoke Spanish, but in the classroom, I was a part of the Boston Public Schools learning program of actually learning English. So a lot of times it was kind of navigating on how am I going to switch from speaking Spanish at home and then transitioning to like speaking English. So I know like when I was a lot younger, that transitioning point was kind of hard for me because Spanish almost left me. And thankfully, like I have like family members who've always spoken to me in Spanish, but I know so many of my little cousins that don't speak Spanish. So I think knowing that and me kind of working in education now, what I've kind of been doing is like when especially with just the students that I've been working with in Boston Public Schools, like I make sure to give the cue that I speak Spanish. So if you want to speak Spanish to me, speak Spanish to me. I'm also now a part of Northeastern's Dominican Student Association, so even there is like some sense of representation just in the college sphere. But I know like for me how much representation matters in just a student seeing like your hair coming out and having your curls shown out, because I know like thankfully enough, like I went to the William E. Russell, that's right on Columbia Road, when I was younger, and I had a Miss Rossi, I had a Miss Suarez, and they were making sure they was always talking to me in Spanish. But had I not had those two people in my life, I'm sure like Spanish would have left me and the Tu Sabo jokes would have been crazy for me. But yeah, like I think for me, when it comes to figuring out my identity, me as an Afro-Latina, that didn't come to me until like I want to say like my 9th grade year. And that was primarily because I started doing debate and learning things about Afro-pessimism. What does it mean to be a black woman in America, to be like, an Afro-Latina woman at that. So, but I know that all came from research outside of the classroom. So I think for me, it's been bringing that information into the classroom and having those conversations as well now too.
Very important that you named about language, because erasure is a real thing in all of our identities, right? So I'm glad that you named that and how important it is for you to hold on to that and also be a representation for your other students that you are educating. All three of our panelists are artists. all of them. So we're gonna start with Josie, who is a poet, Naheem, the actor, theater educator, and also José, whose show includes Afro-Latin music and spoken word. As artists, could you share what your creative process entails and how do you weave your personal experiences into your work? Additionally, how do you reflect your heritage in your artistic expression? And I'm going to throw that to anybody who wants to answer first.
Well, I didn't mean to jump in, but
Yes.
my name is Alexis René Primo Garcia. The reason why you see a Naheem Garcia, because in this industry, it was important that I don't get jumbled up into one category. You know, I walked into an audition, and they were looking for a doctor, Hispanic doctor. I walked in, and the director said, oh, no, we already got him. Give him the gas, you know, the gas attendant. Because once I heard that, I felt like, wait a minute, you don't see me. You see the black man, which is who I am.
Absolutely.
There's no, but I'm Latino, I'm Cuban, and that's important to me. And so therefore, Naheem Garcia was born because I want you to think about what's getting ready to walk through the door. First of all, the process of being an actor, I mean, I take from everything. I take from everything I see. I take from everyone I see, and I bring it to the stage because you have to play that role. So the preparation and the representation was embedded in me since I was a baby. My grandmother taught theater. You know, my mother was a performer. So it was already in my culture. It's already my blood. So it was very important to make sure that the Afro-Latino was heard and that the Afro-Latino was performing. Doesn't mean that I have to always perform with an accent or anything, or I have to throw in somebody's face that I'm Hispanic, but it's important because in this country, especially in this country, it's real easy to get wiped out. Like you said, my house, era Goa. You walked in my house, hablaba español, period, bottom line. You're reading, you're writing, and then you might even have to watch some Spanish TV. So that's my take on. I hope that answered the question.
That was beautiful, yes.
Sorry, can you remind me of the question?
Absolutely. Can you share what your creative process entails and how you weave your personal experiences into your work? And how do you reflect your heritage into your artistic expression?
Yeah, so again, I didn't really feel comfortable with my identity until like the 9th grade. And part of it was because I did do debate. I did speech and debate with the Boston Debate League. And as I started transitioning to that point, there's like a traditional structure of like regular policy debate. And you kind of talk about the United States federal government. In 10th grade, though, I was introduced to a form of debate that was more critical, and I could completely disregard of what the United States federal government was and what that white entity meant to me as a debater. And so I started incorporating poetry in it. What did it mean for me to actually be in this space, in a space or even a practice that was primarily for white students and not students of color? So navigating that, my best way of doing that was kind of rejecting this idea or blanket statement of what the United States federal government was, for example, in the context of this debate league, and started incorporating as I am an actor in this space as an Afro-Latina woman, and I'm showing that through my poetry pieces. So rather than role-playing as, let's say, a policymaker in the debate space, I'm role-playing, not even role-playing, I'm acting as an actor in myself, and the impact is already shown with the poetry piece. So that was kind of me diving into starting to bring in my identity with something that I enjoyed doing, and then eventually I met you, Amanda, and Hanna, and eventually I remember that was 2021. I read my As I poem, and that was straight from an AP literature class, and that was the first time I was even able to create a poem that demonstrated my identity and was supported by an educator. Like, yes, this is an AP lit class, but I'm not teaching Shakespeare, I'm teaching like all these other poets. I'm gonna make sure that you're reading Toni Morrison. I'm gonna make sure that's how we're pressing on it. So I think had I not had an educator like that in my 12th grade, or even like my junior year of high school, where that navigation of my identity in the classroom was kind of like made like okay, if that makes sense. I don't even think I would be producing the type of poetry that I kind of do now. I think it would have just been left at the debate space and never touched again.
Wow.
Deep. You know, Amanda, there's a thread that is coming out of this conversation. One is evident, education and educators. I think there's a bookend in this conversation in the sense that I was teaching bilingual education 1973, right at the beginning of Arthur Garrity's mandate for integrating the Boston Public Schools through busing, which was not received warmly throughout some parts of this city. It's 50 years later, and we're still speaking about the after effects of that moment in time in the history of the city of Boston. But I was teaching bilingual education to young men and women. I'm calling them men and women because they were teenagers already, but they were already experiencing things that they shouldn't have been experiencing at such a young age. And part of that education was how they would switch cultural channels to be able to navigate in a new culture where English was the predominant language and still maintain their tradition and heritage and their own culture and language back home so that they would become bilingual, bicultural. And I found that by using music in the classroom and using spoken words, so I would use Felipe Luciano, I would use Pedro Pietri, I would use Jacobo Morales, I would use poets that would speak about the lived experiences of that period in time so that they would find their voices, so that they would hear Juan Boria speaking about the Afro-descendants of Puerto Rico. I said earlier about that adage, until the lion told the story of the hunter will be glorified. I needed my students to be lions and lioness and tell their stories. And I wanted them to know that the stories could be told in any form. It could be through singing, it could be through writing, it could be through poetry, it could be through painting, whatever they wanted to express themselves to tell the stories. And so, as I hear my friends speak, and now I'm meeting Josie for the first time, this bookend of someone who's teaching 50-some years ago, and now I will sleep fondly tonight. I will be in a deep sleep knowing that the world is in good hands because we have young folk like Josie taking agency to the level in which they're using their power of expression to be able to uplift and amplify who we are in a collective voice that ultimately will result in a world that is much better, a world that is inclusive, a world that embraces the whole idea of diversity being important as to how we live as human beings, a world that will be just, because you heard what she said as far as where she's coming from with her words and her spoken words. So I think, using spoken word, using music, using art, using expression as our educational platforms, wherever we are, is been and has and continues to be part of the North Star for at least three of us that represent many more who are doing this kind of work. Many more who are doing this kind of work, right? I think about Jean Monnet. Father is Jamaican, mother's Afro-Cuban, and you hear her words and you know that she's hitting it right on point, right? And she's integrating music into it. So I think, Amanda, a long-winded answer again. And if you and I were in Cuba right now, whenever you ask a question, those of you who have traveled to Cuba, you know the story, right? You ask a question, it's not a 150-character answer. It's like an hour's worth of tertulia. You get into this deep history and conversation. So I come from that background that when you ask a question, you're not going to get the 20-second soundbite. And so therefore, it's long-winded answers. But I say that to give context to everything that we're saying, but also the importance of how we use the expression. And I'll end here with all of you in the audience. At this age, at 74, I've come to appreciate more the fact that artists amongst us are living angels. I truly believe this. I believe that when the Supreme Being created humanity, the Supreme Being gifted us with certain human beings that had these certain gifts and passion for creativity. And regardless what that passion, creativity, and what form it would be, I mentioned poetry, spoken word, dancing, sculpting, painting, writing, composing, singing, playing an instrument. Regardless what that creativity would bring us, that gift that these living angels bring us is peace, love, and harmony to our lives, and joy and love to our hearts. And I truly believe that each one of them play an important role every single day. They are the soundtrack to our lives.
Absolutely.
They're the ones that give us inspiration. They're the ones when there's darkness, they bring us light. When there's a challenge ahead of us, we hear you, we see you, we feel you, and we say, this is the road that we have to navigate. This is the journey we have to take. So these living angels, you three, and the others who are going to perform later, are very special human beings because in my mind, They're the personification of agape. They're the personification of true love. Love for humanity, love for human beings. They don't do it out of ego. Don't do it for fame. Don't do it for money. They do it because they've been given this gift that they understand is a very special gift to be shared with human beings and humanity. And for that, that's why I answered your question, how do I feel? I'm blessed. I'm amongst living angels.
Jose, do not make me cry on this program in front of all of these people. That was beautifully put. You named something as far as challenges, and before I even get into what are some of the adversities that you all have faced within your career, and being very honest about what those adversities look like, I want to ask, because you named the common thread between all of us are educators. I know I got into education because for me, there was so much I was not taught in my home. I believe that you all are blessed when you have parents and you understand the lineage and the history, the legacy that your family has held. But there's some folks like myself who've had to dig deep in the crates and the history books. And I say that very light. The history books to understand who I am as a person, how my identity shapes who I am. Why do you believe that you all have stepped into educator roles? Because I remember I was an artist first. I was always writing. I was always creating music. I was always doing the artistic journey. But once I started learning about what my identity is, it pushed me towards education for myself and then to others. How did that path and how did your artistic path lead to education, or did your education path lead you to your artistic career?
For me, like I said, my grandmother and my aunt became teachers in the 70s during when the bilingual program was being born, and it also created, in the community, it created some issues because the Black Americans were feeling like they were being pushed out now that this bilingual program is coming in, and Don Jose will know better than I would about that. They were teachers. I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to write lesson plans. I didn't want to do any of that. But when it's your calling, and it's your calling, and you find yourself, no matter what you do, you can't leave that space, then you have a responsibility to serve. Absolutely. And in my household, and I was taught, you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And it was also important to make sure that there was representation. It feels good when my students come in and they don't see me coming. Right? De repente estoy yo hablando español and they're like, hey, somebody can identify. And one of the jobs that I'm doing for the Huntington right now in the education department is that every other Friday I'm sitting with 2 students that came here from Santo Domingo that don't speak English, that need translation so they can learn to do some of this poetry work we're going to do because it's poetry out loud. Another group is going to be doing the August Wilson New Voices monologue competition. So last year I discovered that I was able to help people that cannot speak English, that speak Spanish, through dialogue, through a monologue, I helped them speak English.
Wow.
And it feels good to know that you can help somebody. When I was coming up, very seldom did you see a teacher. Once they started this busing situation, I didn't see people. I was always the only one, especially being Afro-Latino. Oh, you don't look Spanish. If I hear that one more time, when somebody's gonna get hurt. Because what do you mean I don't look Latino? What does that mean? What does a Latino look like, first of all? Let's just talk about that. What does that look like? What does that taste like? What does that feel like? So yes, representation's important. It feels good to know that a student could walk through the door and someone could speak to them in their language and help them transition into the American lifestyle. Does that kind of shapes a little bit?
Absolutely. That was a perfect answer.
I think, so yesterday, it was in Boston Public Schools in the district building, we did a celebration for Hispanic and a Latinx Heritage Month. And in there, we had we had cultural foods, we had people dancing merengue, people were dancing, people were talking, and it was nice. It was really good. Last minute, we needed a poet, and I think, and I put myself in that position where I was like, I read a little. I have some poems. If you guys want to hear it, I can do my thing. And then I did. But I think the easiest I think in that sense, or I guess in that opportunity itself, I opened it with something, and I had to vocalize what I had to say. So I talked about how representation is not just music. And I think just having that little like, okay, so my foot is here because I can read. Let me just might as well put my whole foot in and let you guys know what's really up. So I think taking those opportunities and kind of applying where my identity lies in that space kind of moves my purpose, if that makes sense. So I had read an I Am From poem, and I talked about what it means to be an Afro-Latina. What does that mean surrounded by just in general a white system? What does that look like? And I think even just having that opening line with like, hey, representation is just not playing the music in the classroom. It's talking about Black artists, it's talking about Black authors, teaching those Black authors and having those tough conversations that not a lot of educators are comfortable having. So I think for me, it's definitely been like taking that opportunity and just, you know, using art as kind of my segue to enter the space and kind of saying and vocalizing what I have to say. I think another thing with representation is I subbed at an elementary school all of last year, and there was these two little Dominican girls all the time always talking to me in Spanish. And one of them, she would always see my hair, like she would be like, oh my God, el pelo tuyo se parece como el mío. And I'm like, it does. And then there was another one who would literally just tell me about her trips to DR of Dominican Republic. And I'm like, I love being the person that you can actually talk to about this, because not to say like if she were to go to another school, I don't know if that's what the representation would look like, but I know that it just takes one teacher that looks like you to look at you and be like, hey, you can be where I am, and that brings enough security. Yeah. Like I even think back to, again, I keep talking about debate, but like my introduction to debate took one teacher being like, yo, you like to argue a lot, you should come after school. And then even though like my family, we didn't have that much involvement with education was, I mean, my grandma we lived on a Section 8 voucher, like that's kind of how my life was growing up. So in terms of like the presence, it wasn't necessarily there, but I knew I had to do something to make something better. So I think I kind of started sticking to what I knew I can do best. So it was speaking out, and then also poetry. So then I started kind of combining those as the years progressed through debate and bringing in my identity there, and then just in general like advocating for myself through just lines. And I think that has been good for me.
Deep. You know, Amanda, I think part of the context of this conversation is when we lived. And by that, what I'm saying, I'm a product of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now this new century. And so I'm a product of the civil rights movement. I'm the product of Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta. I'm the product of the Black Panthers. I'm a product of the Young Lords. I'm a product of women's lib. I'm a product of social unrest. I'm a product of Vietnam War. I'm a product of college campuses and uprisings that took place during the 1970s. I went to Antioch College. When you said I came to Ohio, it wasn't I just dropped in Ohio. I came from the University of Puerto Rico to go to Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which is considered one of the most liberal, if not most radical colleges in the United States. But that being said, I came there in a period of time of a social movement. And the books I was reading during that period of time included, Frantz Fanon, included James Baldwin, included Eldridge Cleaver, and included Perry Thomas Down These Mean Streets. It included the books that spoke about blackness. It spoke about equity. It spoke about justice. It spoke about racism. It spoke about imperialism. It spoke about white supremacy. It spoke about all of these things. And it spoke about the myths of this country and Europe and other countries as well when it comes to how we describe history. And so one of the things that was important for me as I was becoming much more enlightened and learning was that I realized we had to unlearn what we have learned to learn what we needed to learn, to know what we need to know. Because we've been taught things that in reality are based in many instances on myths and paint a picture that favors one over another. And so therefore we have to do digging in of what the history looks like from different perspectives so that we can put context into history. And so I think as an educator for me, it was important, A, to give my students voices, that they could feel that they were empowered, that they were liberated enough to tell their stories. And B, to give them a roadmap for them to then become enlightened in ways that they could be critical thinkers and say, okay, this is what I'm being taught. How does this fit into what the history looks like in reality for the folks coming from this section, right? Because if you read 1898, it's a very different story when it's told by the people who've been colonized and imperialized and have been abused and oppressed. It's a very different story.
Very different.
And so it was important for me then to give them instruments, herramientas, that they could use. And for me, it was important, I said, use your artistic creativity is finding your voices, right? They, in turn, I celebrated 49 years of being on the radio, now my 50th year of being on the radio, and I owe it all to students like Josie. They kicked me out of the classroom because they said, Mr. Massó, we love what you do with us every day, but you're only teaching 20 of us. There's 20 students in the classroom. Go do a radio show. Go do television. You reach thousands. And so I've been blessed because of them kicking me out of the classroom. And for 50 years being able to do radio, I did television for VBS, right here for GBH, La Plaza. I did an Emmy Award-winning show that was produced by one of my former students at Copley Square at Channel 5 when I hosted Aquí. And so I think that at the end of the day, it's the connection of that we can marry, we can bring together artistic expression in every form into every other form of life. It could be in health, it could be in business, it could be in all forms of society, it could be in education for sure, it could be right here in libraries where you have the opportunity to hear music, to hear poets and others perform. We need to make sure that art and artistic expression is not a second thought. Oh yes, if we can afford it, let's bring this in. No, it should be a priority. Again, if you were to travel with us to Cuba, you would see that artistic expression is elevated everywhere. It's the highest in the pantheon of society. And so I think that for us, I'm speaking collectively, the idea of education and artistic expression and the voices confronting all of the challenges. Naheem was saying, what does a Latino look like? You know, and pardon me that I'm going to say this, the first time when I came to the United States at the age of 20, everyone said I would be successful because I was bilingual, bicultural, I was intelligent, I was educated, I was coming to a university, and therefore I knew more about the United States than many people who come to the United States. I knew about the culture, I knew about the history, society, et cetera, et cetera. My first day on campus in a very liberal, some would say radical college, in my first experience at a lunch where all of the students, for the majority, were African American, student in front of me asked where I was from, and I said I was from Puerto Rico, and he was caught off guard and said, are you Spanish? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm Puerto Rican. He says, Puerto Rican speaks in Spanish. I had to speak Spanish for him to understand I was from Puerto Rico. And then he says, you are Spanish. I said, no, again, I'm going to repeat. Spanish is a language. If you're from Spain, you're Spanish. Like if you speak English, I'm not assuming you're English.
Right.
I'm assuming you speak English.
Right.
And so I had to codify and break down bit by bit what it is to be someone who is from south of the U.S. border. And realized at that moment that very few people understood the history of Latin America and the Caribbean. Even U.S. citizens that come from Puerto Rico, we were misunderstood. We were lumped together as being Mexican, being whatever, right? Yeah. And so I thought that education would be my roadmap for me to be able to at least lend a forum where we would all be educated. And then my radio show, of course, will ultimately be the platform that I would use. But what I was going to say, the first time I was ever called the N-word was not from some white cracker from Kentucky. It was an African American that afternoon at that lunch table when he said to me, well, you know what? You don't look Latino. You look like a to me. And I said, excuse me? And he said, that's what you look like. And I said, okay, why so? And he said, because Latinos, Puerto Ricans don't look like you. And I asked him to explain what they look like. Yeah. At the end of the day, it was a stereotype he had from West Side Story. Yep. It was a stereotype he had from West Side Story. So again, what that said to me was I needed to play a role as to how we educate each other when it comes to our history, our ethnicities, our nationalities, our, you know, we're going to be someone's ancestor. Sure. And we want to make sure that our descendants understand the richness that we bring to this world, but also the richness that everyone brings to this world, right? Because it's not just we bring more than you bring. No, it's all of us bring something to this world that is worthy of us celebrating, embracing, using as part of our persona, and at the end of the day, understanding that if we are not together as human beings, we are going to perish as human beings.
Yes, we are.
right? We're going to perish. And so therefore, a long-winded answer again, my sister, to your question as to the challenges and the use of education and art as a way of mitigating those challenges that we confront.
I hope you all have really listened to what each of these folks have said this afternoon. I have one last and final question, and I am really, really saddened that we have to end already because I could talk to you all day. What is one key takeaway that you would like the audience here in the Boston Library, but as well as at home, that are going to watch this? What is one thing you would like for them to know, to take away from this conversation from your perspective?
My grandmother always said, "Mijo, nosotros venimos aquí a comer." We came to this country to eat, because in Cuba, if you didn't work, you didn't eat. We all came here to eat. And I'll tell you this much. If somebody came from another planet to invade this planet, I want to see how quick somebody who's racist is going to ignore somebody from another culture who's ready to back them up. We see it in Marvel Comics. We think it's great, but the reality of life is we need to come together. Well said, Don Jose, when you say, if we don't, we will perish. So the one thing I want you to walk away with is do something kind for somebody. Do something kind for somebody.
I think the main theme has been everyone here interacts with education in some way. So I think education in itself, like, it should be something that should be invested in. I think that in general, take time to read, take time to learn, take time to have dialogue, especially dialogue that you might not be comfortable with. I think a lot of times we're very used to sticking with what we're comfortable with and not moving to something we might see ourselves being uncomfortable with. So I think my biggest takeaway is just, one, educate yourself, and then two, be okay with being uncomfortable and have conversation and dialogue.
All right.
Be okay with being uncomfortable.
Amanda, if I can leave this in a different sphere, I ask that you indulge me. You know, my wife, who has been my wife for 29 years, will be the first one to tell you that she goes to church, that I don't go to church. But that doesn't mean I'm not a man of faith or spirituality. And I would like to end just saying the following. There's a saying, God's gift to you is life. What you do with your life is your gift to God.
Perfectly said. Right, drop the mic, drops mic. I want to thank each of our panelists one more time. Josiana Colon, Naheem Garcia, José, C. Massó III. Thank you so much. Please give them a big round of applause for their time, their energy, their thoughts, their education. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. And we truly appreciate you. We're in the poetry part of Outspoken Saturday, and after that conversation, I feel so energized, and I cannot wait to hear our speakers. With that being said, we're going to roll right on into it with our first Outspoken Saturday speaker of this afternoon. Please put your hands together and give big love, because what did we say? Vulnerability, sharing our hearts and our arts on the stage is a lot. So we need high vibrations in the air, yes? Can we start clapping? Put your hands together for Durane West.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? All right. So I have one poem that I'd like to recite. It's called Requiem for a Nest. It's actually, the origin of it is from an index poem. So it's a form of poetry where you look in the back of a book, sometimes an anthology. This case, it was an anthology. And you take some of the index and you create a poem. Okay? So, a requiem for a nest. All I know is at 57, my father learned to grow things, cure the generations of erasure, a harvest song. Greenness taller than the gods, a fearless liturgy, where metamorphism from brown menace to a brown girl's nature poem is only an eclogue at twilight. All I know is barriers deep in the quiet wood, haunted oak, the migration from Mississippi gardens to earthquake blues, reclaiming earth as a living thing. And all I know is my grandfather walked in those woods. San Francisco, spring 1986, 3 days of forests, rivers, and freedom like wind talkers, watching blackbirds turn to ghosts. And what more of what there was, sacred history of the earth, since everybody can't be safe, and we are not strangers here. Black man talks of reaping, referencing history as an apple tree, penning poetry to his kin, if ever I shall be nature boy, knowing I must walk this wood and rain, lonesome, urban nature in the mulberry fields with 12 million black voices. We are not strangers here. I am black and the trees are green. Thank you. So my name on Instagram, if you want to follow me, is Mirror X Windows, after a great Lucille Clifton quote, great poet, if you know who Lucille Clifton is. I also do have zines from this particular project of mine called Mirrors and Windows. And if you'd like to buy that, you can come to see me after this. So thank you so much.
Hola, mi gente. This poem, called Plastic Covers, is from about 30 years ago. They came from Santiago de los Caballeros, or Santo Domingo, or some rural village we've never heard of. Now they live in Lawrence or Lowell, and they hate the snow. And the women no longer carry bundles on their heads. Rafaela shops at the Marqueta to the sound of an AM radio. The rhythms are urgent. Señora ama de casa, the DJ cries. Preste atención, preste mucha atención. He advertises forros, plastic covers, and then plays another merengue. Rafaela smooths out 14 $1 bills and hands them to the grocer's wife, seated at the cash register. She walks to the bus stop with her bag full of plantains, black beans, a 10-pound sack of rice, Productos Goya. Rafaela waits patiently. Her bus will come. The girls will get married. The boys find jobs. She and Hernando will save their money, open their own marqueta. Someday, every chair in their home will be covered with plastic. But when they visit, the children will say, Mama, get rid of these forros. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, everyone. Very proud to be here today. My name is Jaypix Belmer. I'm going to read a pledge from my book. It's called Bird Street, Building Individuals Reconstructing Dorchester. That's where I live. And I dedicate it to one of my favorite photographers, Eugene Richards. And I really love his work and admire his community connection. I am an African. We will remember the humanity, glory, and suffering of our ancestors and honor the struggle of our elders. We will strive to bring new values and new life to our people. We will have peace and harmony among us. We will be loving, sharing, and creative. We will work, study, and listen so we may learn. Learn so we may teach. We will cultivate self-reliance. We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland. We will raise many children for our nation. We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage. We will live as models to provide new direction for our people. We will be free and self-determining. We are an African people. We are an African people. We are an African people, and we will win. Now this second part, we are community people. We will remember the humanity, glory, and suffering of our ancestors and honor the struggle of our elders. We will strive to bring new life and new values to our people. We will have peace and harmony among us. We will be loving, sharing, and creative. We will work, study, and listen. Listen so that we may learn, learn so that we may teach. We will cultivate self-reliance. We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland. We will raise many children of our nation. We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage. We will live as models to provide new direction for our people. We will be free and self-determining. We are community people. We are community people. We are community people, and we will win. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, guys. My name is DiCaronimo. I am a poet. I am an optician. I am the host of the Openest Mic. I'm a wife, and I'm really, really happy to be here. So thank you so much for taking the time on a Saturday. This is a poem I wrote called Home. Home. From Old English ham, meaning estate, meaning land enclosed by a river, meaning village. Home as a physical structure, home as a state of mind. Your books arranged in whatever order you prefer, counters that you can reach, switches that hum at your touch, your most comfortable chair holding you gently. Water for tea boiling in the kitchen, leaves at the bottom of your cup clumped in quenching prophecy, spelling rest, spelling safety. Voices in the next room, the steady hum of conversation punctuated with the electric currents of intermittent laughter. We are here. We are all here together. Home, from Old English ham, meaning estate, meaning lands enclosed by a river, meaning village. Keeping your heart there. It's home, a doorway you can enter, beckon from. Home as the nucleus of a neighborhood, a community, a life. Hands together, making light work of the profound. Interlocking of fingers, holding, guiding, leading, building. Home, from the Old English ham, meaning estate, meaning land enclosed by a river, meaning village. A foundation set. These load-bearing structural components must be square and level to prevent total collapse. A neighborhood of security, of gardens to tend to. Water you can drink deeply of. The comfort that comes from care, from giving and from receiving. The hope that comes from love, giving and receiving. The kind of home that is rooted in a village. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Okay, so the two poems I'm going to be reading, one is called Bonded Curls. I made this poem in the middle of like a writer's block where I literally could not write for like a little bit. And then I entered in a workshop and I was able to make this poem. And I kind of talk about my first interaction with my hair. Okay, so Bonded Curls. There was a day in July 2017 when my hair laid down my back, drenched in dryness, split ends and tangles, craving the new Cantu because all the curly girls had it. My hair, stringy, holding years of heat damage, soaked from my tears of never loving it, holding insults of el pajón, the straining iron, and psychological damage from hatred words from someone meant to love you. The dryness of my hair was killing, so I decided to wash it. There was a point where I would wash my hair and leave it tangled because that was the only way S's would curve, but also because no one ever taught me how to take care of los rizos. But this day in particular, it was humid, so I decided to wash it. My hair stuck on my body from the water that spilled from the faucet. I held my first white tooth comb, starting from abajo and working my way to the top because that's the way the pin straight haired Dominican lady told me to do it when she gifted to me and when she gave me my first compliment. Cuida tu pelo para secánotelo, los rizos tuyos son bello. Translating, take care of your hair, stop straightening it, your curls are beautiful. I wonder if she thought of hers that way too, but as I raked, I grew excited. Not owning any curly hair products at all, only ever owning those cater for the pin straight whiteness, sulfate present, paraben there, alcohol drying. I had bought the new Cantu all the curly girls own with my own money. I remember thinking, yo, my hair is about to look so fire. As I raked, I saw curls I never seen before. She looked moisturized, the split end still present, but its presence didn't weigh me like it did before. The conditioner was light and nourishing, better than before. As I got out the shower, finishing the hurdling task of facing tangles, I looked in the mirror and began styling. Ringlets of curls affirmed by that one compliment. A humid day in July, my hair dried, and the curls popped, still with stringy pieces, but bigger and more defined than ever. And with excitement, I showed my Dominican grandmother progress in one day, and though it was not much, it was to me. Te parece como una loca, y ese pajón? And then the ringlets deflated, until the anger ignited within me made the curls grew stronger, bigger, slowly morphing into this being of radiating light. The brown in my hair had an aura of golden. She lit so bright. The curls became tighter. She morphed into a body of brown light shielding me. My grandmother flawed, accustomed to the Dominican affiliation to white beauty, my curls countered hers. My curls morphed into a woman. She hugs me, whispers a phrase to my grandmother, something too low for me to hear, but know that my pupils dilated from witnessing just her beauty. She was still attached to my scalp, but I did not realize that her beauty was my beauty. She touches my grandmother. Her hair was similar to mine before, and her hair morphed into what it was until anti-blackness took over her standard of beauty. My hair hugs me again, returns to me, and my abuela smiles at me. Her curls belong to hers and now mine to me. And to me, that was a sign that we were both free. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, 333, right on the dot. There you go. I've been catching them all day. All right, this next one is called Lemon Tree. I decided to choose this one because I would say this was the first poem I ever wrote where there was an anger, kind of like fueling it. So like in that previous, I had anger because my hair, my relationship with my hair. And any other poem I've ever written or ever read out loud, there's always been some kind of anger. And this one, though, we don't talk anymore. I would say I wrote it because I felt genuine happiness while writing it, and it felt like a pleasure. So this one's called Lemon Tree. I like to sit with you by a lemon tree. Sit down and sit with ease, stare at you with eyes that are pleased. I would rather be with you than any place I'd rather be. I like to sit with you by a lemon tree, laugh and laugh with ease, feel the breeze against my skin, feel your squeeze and seize all your biggest insecurities. I want to know your fears, what brings you tears when they come. I want to hear about the good and the bad of your youngest years. I want to know what your favorite taste is and what adversities you faced. I want to know the trauma bonds, how the last disgraced you and faced you without loving you as much as I love you, because boy, do I love you. I want to trace your scars and cut and paste my love onto your heart. I want to remind you for the remainder of our days the beauty of your face. I want to be a part of the reason for the smile that takes up your own face. I want to sit by you, stand by you, breathe by you, even in outer space where the lack of gravity makes you feel so far, but the love make you feel so close. I want to take away your distaste and misplaced anger that you've never been able to claim. I want to be able to help you unravel the spoiled fruits of your mind, teach you how to be kind to yourself, love yourself, even if at the end you're not meant to be mine. I'd like to sit by you by a lemon tree, even when you don't want me to. I'd like for you to know that the love I have to give will always be endless to you, even if I look like a dumb girl picking up crumbs trying to find you. I want to be so near to you, even if knowing I lost you brings me fears or tears still. I want to be your biggest cheer. I want to sit by you by a lemon tree planted by our own hands in a backyard with both our names. I want it to be known for fame and not Hollywood fame, but the lemon tree that grew from love, a lemon tree that grew from a piece of cement, a lemon tree that grew from my fears of ever being with you and experiencing you, which I'm so glad I did. My love, I want to sit by you by a lemon tree. Will you join me? Thank you.
I always thought if I were to open my grandmother's skull, I would not see a brain. No neurons pirouetting into one body, white and gray matter dissolves. Instead, I would see an art museum where we get lost in her wonderland, each gallery consisting of a different chapter of her life, each painting being a different memory. The first gallery would be titled Childhood, where my grandmother, her sister, her brother, all transfigure into one person. The second gallery is titled College, peeling and pasting stickers all over the notepads, all over the planners, scribbling hysterically on due dates. The third gallery is titled Full-Time Artist, each article of clothing metamorphosizing into a brushstroke, adding dimension to each smile line, memorizing the grooves of wet clay turning dry, pastelic fumes absorb into her fingernails. The fourth gallery is titled Motherhood, where there is a kaleidoscope of pastels. Blooming is her at the beach, and through the painting, you can feel the thick heat being made of styrofoam. With a microwavable oil smell, another painting, my dad smiling from graduating high school, adding dimension to each smile line, texture to each expression. My grandmother's museum. Galleries always remaking, always accepting new submissions. Recently, her paintings started revamping, started shape-shifting, tweaking. Only a few noticed looking a little different, nothing drastic or anything. Shadows dimming, colors fading, dimensions pleading to be touched, texture smearing. One painting, a self-portrait of her tilting her head. The name of the painting is, what time does that play start again? Another painting titled, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that event. There is one portrait where she is standing out with her arms wide open, and the name of the painting is, did I ever show you that painting called Microwavable Oil Smells, where your dad and I went to the beach and your uncle dropped an ice cream in the sand, and each painting starts to blend together, creating a complete new set of hues, her own color schemes, creating a completely different color theory, just one mixture of watercolor molded together. A new painting titled, What is Today? Another painting titled, Wait, I Have Children. Another painting with her hands, with her eyebrows shrieking, hands to her heart, titled, Who Are You? Have I Met You Before? I ask her, can you show me the painting? The one titled Microwavable Oil Smells. The painting based off when you took my dad to the beach. And my grandmother holds the calluses of my hands, squeezes mine, and smiles with a muted grin. Thank you.
I want to start by expressing gratitude for this opportunity. Outspoken Saturdays, outspoken every day. It's meaningful to me that, I'm presenting under the aegis of WGBH, where GBH has supported the public voice as long as I've been in the Boston area. And of course, being in the public library, the hallowed halls of learning. So vote to support this kind of open inquiry. Gratitude for Amanda Shea. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This piece is called The Thinness of Paraffin. I told Icarus, relax, it's just wax. A dream of wings is more real than any realization. All of creation resides in imagination. Imagine an earthen vessel thrown on divinity's wheel, clay shaped like the universe, glazed with cerulean sky, dappled in blood, fired in kilns, earth, air, fire, water, as elements of revolution, without which there can be no identity. Some fights for selfhood result in hard-won first names only. Do you know Dave? Dave was a potter, the most renowned of the black potters of Old Edgefield in South Carolina. He knew Confederate slave owners literally made it a crime for black slaves to learn to read and write. Dave took the fight to them, inscribed poems in jars, fired with revolution in the stars, in Dave's far-reaching imagination. Let us take stock of our situation. Potters are all my relations, the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds. Potters are artists, dancers, physicists, poets. We carve identity marks into our creations so that all who hold our flights of fancy, hands cupped and warmed by brimful ideas, know they are in relation to our notions. Adorned by inspiration, our scrivened vessels pass from hand to eternal hand. We take turns drinking deeply or sipping. We are both sacred souls and sensate soma, seated with sanctity. I salivate for rainbow essence. So sated, we settle and spread roots widely like banyan trees. Perhaps we're all always reaching for connection. Aren't we imagination vessels? Thrown on local wheels, fired in furnaces, and finished ugly or beautiful. Might we trust the design? It's fine. There is no notion so bold these bowls can't hold. Nothing exists outside of imagination. And yet we are beset by irrationality, not properly guided by intentionality. We don't seem to know when to close our eyes and take fanciful flight, which cognitions to stir only in our bowls, and which inspiration to ladle from humble vessel to pour out into material reality. Take wax and feathers. A dream of flight would be more real than wings of Icarus. Better to hold some flights of fancy lovingly in imagination. Beware the longing to be God, lest we forget that we are already divinity. And in forgetting, we lose communion. We are cast into the void, ashamed of our nakedness. Then, frail and human, panicked, imagination becomes the domain of chimeras, of ghouls, and we are recast as fools. Wax and tar and feathers, ambition and contrition drive our ailing condition, and then we're on to dreaming of ammunition, profound abnegation. Gone is the elation of imagining, and we race headlong to extinction. I think God is sick of us playing Icarus. A dream of wings is more real than the pretense that we could fly. Here, close your eyes. Recruit each breath to animate suspension. With each inhalation, more elevation, floating gently up from the good earth. This type of flying is exaltation. It's not that we fly too close to the sun. It's that we fail to realize that we and the stars are already one.
That concludes our Outspoken Saturday. Give it up one more time for Russ Livingston. This feels weird. Okay, with that being said, I just want to say thank you all again for attending this October Outspoken Saturday here at the Boston Public Library. Please give it up for the Boston Public Library. We want to say thank you so much for holding space. Give it up for the Newsfeed Cafe for serving us all day and all the work that you all do. I also wanted to mention really quick because our panelists today, please give it up for José C. Massó III, Naheem Garcia, as well as Josiana Colon. As José mentioned, if you want to tune into the program, there is an amazing documentary on PBS right now about the Busing Desegregation Act that happened here in Boston, so please stay tuned. I also, before I go, I want to thank our wonderful GBH crew, Maddie Geyer, in the back, Olivia Garcia, Juan Jose Cadena, and Sandra Lopez Berg. I am Amanda Shea, your host of Outspoken Saturday. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you know anyone who is interested, or maybe they're not even in the space and you know they're a poet, please come and see our sign-up sheet here. A lot of folks that are here today were actually on the sign-up sheet from last month. So with that being said, we will see you at the next Outspoken Saturday here on November 2nd. Thank you all, and I really hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. We'll see you next month. Thank you for celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month here with us for Outspoken Saturdays. Goodbye.